So, should be recording now. Okay, so Adu, you had a question?
Yeah.
So let's take that now.
Yeah, I mean, a couple of times we have learned about main and navigation and section. Is there any technical reason to use them? Because to me, it's just a grouping of elements like we do in div tag.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now you mentioned main. Let's just because right now there's not a main tag, right? No. So let's just introduce that one. So let's put that one here. And I would end it here. So that's the main part of the website. It's not the footer, it's not the nav, but it's everything else that I just wrapped in the main tag. So the reason why, so what you were arguing is that wouldn't it look the same if you just do like this, right?
Yeah.
And put a div here and put a div here and so on and so on.
Apply the relative CSS on that div.
Yeah. And yes, you're right. It would look exactly the same visually when you visit the website and you watch it through a web browser. But that's the point that we try to drive here, is that we, besides what you see in the web browser, we want to have good semantics. So when you get all this stuff out as data, you want to have some way to figure out what am I looking at. And without having all the CSS that makes sure that the navigation is something that sits in the top of the page, and it's maybe like a bar or something like that, maybe it has a different background color or something like that. Without having all that CSS and seeing that in a browser, it's very difficult to work out. This is probably a menu of some sort. It's a navigation, right? That's very difficult to figure that out if you just have a div in there and you put some styling on that. But if you use those elements here that are like elements that the HTML community have kind of like approved on, then everyone knows what it means. And nav, no, so it's navigation. That's some sort of menu that you can press and you can go to some other places on your website, right? And main, okay, so that's like something that sits around the main content of your site. So that's probably the stuff that you spend the most time reading, right? And you have like the footer here. Okay, yeah, so that's probably something that's sitting in the bottom of the page, right? It would be weird if you had a footer in the top. So, so it's all about semantics. It's about kind of like explaining your HTML and making your HTML able to kind of work without CSS. It wouldn't look like the website that you want it to look like, but it would be usable, and that's the key point here. So you can see that the page that we have here is not very pretty, but as far as you know, like HTML was designed for documents, like for exchanging documents on the web, and styling was something that came after. And in the beginning, they didn't care about styling at all. They just wanted something that was readable. And this kind of looks like a Word document, right? And that's because we took some proper care into choosing the right semantic elements. Because if we start messing up with semantics, then this would really quickly turn out really messy, and would be difficult to figure out that that stuff is a menu navigation and stuff like that. Yeah. Did that answer your question? Good. So that feeds pretty well into the next thing that I want to talk about, and that's kind of like the division of labor between HTML and CSS. So we mentioned CSS many times. So maybe just so you had a little bit of inline CSS here, just to show you what CSS can look like. So here we have a border that's 2 pixels, and it has this color 0, 0, 0. And my editor is helping me out, telling that that's actually just black. And it's set to solid. So that means we have a solid line around our element here, and it's black, and it's 2 pixels. And with, yeah, stroke is 2 pixels. So this is what styling looks. It's just some instructions that tells this is how this element should look like, right? So the division of labor between HTML and CSS is that we want to kind of like decouple content from presentation. When we talk about presentation, we talk about how things look. So that's kind of like the stuff that a graphic designer would be doing, whereas content is kind of the stuff that the journalist would be doing, right? So the journalist should not be sitting there and worrying about like, yeah, when people press this, I want it to be red and stuff like that. That's not the job of the journalist. The journalist just want to tell that this is something that you can click, and if you click it, you go somewhere else. So that's content. And I was saying a few times before that I don't want you to be styling your pages using HTML. And an example of how I could be styling my page using HTML is you see this headline here, WWF. So maybe there was a designer who did like a sketch of this in Photoshop, and he's telling me, yeah, it's not quite right. WWF should be a little smaller. And then I'm like, yeah, okay, hell yeah. I just make it smaller. So I make it an H3. But that might not be the right thing to do, because if this breaks the semantics of the page, then that's not the right thing to do. So in that case, it might be the right thing to do to actually put that in styling. So that's where you do something like this, and then do like font size is, and I have no idea what this font size currently is. I'm just going to guess 14 pixels. Let's see if it turns smaller. Definitely turn small, or maybe too small, but it doesn't really matter. So the point is here that this line here is going to be all the graphic designers' work and all the stuff that go inside the tags here, and also the semantics that lies in those tags that we select. That's like the journalist work. And in a minute we'll show you how we can take all this stuff here and put it into separate files and do other things, so it's completely decoupled. It's because the ideal scenario for us at the current moment is that we have like one file that is content and one file that's presentation. So that's actually what we want to achieve. And I think it hooks well into what you were about to do, right?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. Okay, so right now this is like an example of something called inline style. That's when you write the style, like the rules of how the elements should look inside the elements like this. Can you think of like a disadvantage of using this? What would be a bad thing about using this?
Changing it every time when we
Yeah. So
need to change.
yeah, exactly. So
Change it bit by bit.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, could you make all the H2 headings red? I would really like that. I think that looks much better.
Yeah. So if I would do like this.
Or not background. Oh yeah, I could do that as well.
Yeah, but yeah.
Up to you.
Yeah, okay. It's not the best solution, but I think this will work. So yeah, so
But that's only one.
yeah, so that's the problem. So if we had to do each one of them, we had to add this to each tag, and there's like a concept in programming called redundancy. So when you're working on some code and you're repeating the same thing over and over again, usually there's a better way to do it. So every time you're repeating yourself doing something again and again, maybe there's a better way to do it. So a disadvantage of this is that if you want to apply styles multiple times, you have to repeat yourself, and it quickly gets like very hard to look over, because like the styling tags go in with the HTML, so it's a little bit harder to see the structure of the HTML because the styles also apply. So maybe we should make a new file here.
Usually I'm inside a folder, and then I can right-click the folder to get a new file. Is it this one? Home folder. Oh, it's because I haven't told it where it's saved. But it is actually... go.
Thank you. So we're gonna make another type of file here, which is a CSS style. So what we can do is, if we go back to here, we can have all the styles apply in a separate file, and then we can link them directly. So what you do is that you can see actually already here, there's already a link here, which is like in the main part of the HTML that we copied. So if you just
Can I do something real quick?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly that. I just want to actually have like a, let's see here. No, it doesn't work at the moment. Just do something like this, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it says it's a link tag, so it means that we are importing something from a different file, and then you can see that it's the rel element is like a style sheet. So we have to tell HTML that what we are importing is like a CSS file that is a way to apply styles by the type text.css, so we know it's a CSS file. And then the href, like it's actually the same as we did here with the anchor tags, that we link to a different page. It's the same we do here. So we have to link the name of the file. So I just call it style. You could also call it main. So if you do something like this, now we have it linked, but we haven't added anything yet, so nothing's going to change. But what we could do is that we can take this, for example. So we know it's a h2 here. So for example, if we go in here and just say h2, and
So it's shift out and then
okay, then we can go do the same thing. So now it applied to all the h2 elements, because we said, okay, for all the h2 elements we want to apply a background color of red. So this works fine, and it's much easier to look at, because we can just go in here and then we can see all the rules we applied for styling in our document here. But say for example that we actually don't want this one. We don't want this one to be red. We only want one of these. Now the problem is that we just said H2, so each time we add H2, it automatically is going to be red. But maybe we don't want all the H. Yeah, sorry, you had a question?
Yeah, it's just like the CSS file have to locate it at the same folder as the HTML, or?
Yeah, in this case you do. We're gonna get a little bit into how to like map your files in different folders and stuff to make it a bit more easier to like have an overview.
Maybe just show what it would look like if it was in a different folder.
Yeah, okay. So if we were to have a big project, then it would, and we had a lot of HTML files, maybe we would have different CSS styles as well. So
Yeah, let's just do it. So make a style of CSS folder.
yeah, so we could call it something like styles, and we can move this to this here. And now we need to apply the path. So you see here, there's the folder styles. So we can just go like this, styles, and inside styles we want to link style.css. So we do like this, and it's still working. So that's how you apply. You can have like multiple folders, and you can you just apply the path. So yeah. But say for example we would want to target only one of the H2 elements. Say this one, for example. There's multiple ways to do this, but I think we could do is that we could apply an ID, because we want to target only this one specific. So say we would only want to apply something to this one here, then we could apply an ID, and there's like different naming conventions, ways to do this, but usually when you do this you just want to think of something that's specific for this element. So I can't really think of a good naming for this one, but we could just call it
important header.
Important header, yeah, that's a good one.
Actually sounds more like a class name.
Yeah, it sounds more like class name, but you get the idea. So in here, so like if you don't want anything in front of it, it applies to all H2 elements. But since we have an ID, we can use this element here, and then we can just copy this. And when you put like the hash in front of it, it applies to IDs. So IDs are usually used when there's only one or few elements you want to target with some specific CSS. So let's say in this case we only want to add this H2. There needs to be some specific rules only applied to this one. So if you go in here and no,
Shift Alt.
Shift Alt. like this,
Yep.
and then do I don't know. Let's just do a font size again, and then we make it 20 pixel, for example. Then you see it updated only this one up here because we set the ID. So yeah, usually IDs are meant to target only a specific tag. You could also, like, if you were to have like another section like this, you could also make several like sections or components with the same ID. But usually you do it when you want to target something specific.
Is there another function of IDs besides styling an element that you only have one of on a page?
Are you referring to the fact that it's easier to like find in the structure?
Yeah, no, I'm thinking about linking to it,
But
deep
linking
linking.
the different parts of the page.
Exactly. Yeah.
Oh yeah, okay. Yeah, I forgot to mention that. So
Because maybe try to show that. So
yeah.
if you go in the browser and you link directly to important header.
So we could do
Just maybe take the browser full page now.
yeah.
We can actually see the URL.
So the
Yeah, not that full. I have some magic key commands for that. So what I want to show is that if you put behind the URL, you can put a hash, and then do like import. Whoops. Header, and then probably because the page is too. Am I doing something wrong here? It should just scroll down to that header for me. Huh. I'm not sure why that doesn't work. It's quite common if you have like documentation pages or something like that. Maybe go to something like
I've only seen that work for anchor tags.
Huh?
I've only seen that work for anchor tags.
Oh, it has to be in an anchor tag. No, you can share the.
Because it's its own page anchor.
It has to be with the anchor tag and the reference. So ID is to be accessed, and the period, the place you click, that has to be an anchor tag. And then
Because I'm pretty sure I've seen many times like links to a specific section here in the documentation being shared.
Yeah. But there's an anchor tag.
See here. I think this is actually, so you can see down in the bottom, way in the bottom, you can see the link is to hash reboot. And now it added it up here, and if I open a new page, it scrolls way down to reboot. I think it was because I had.
Look at reboot, you'll see that's an anchor tag.
Yeah?
Yeah. You can inspect on that.
Oh, so you mean the ID has to be on an anchor tag?
It's an anchor, not with an href, but with a name. It's an old, on this post, it's listed as an old. So there should be an A tag that provides the name at that point.
Oh, yeah, that's
Because,
right. Yeah, okay, yeah, sure. Okay,
It's a bit
cool.
confusing because it's the same as CSS, but it's actually a much older
Yeah,
HTML functionality.
yeah, that's right. Okay, yeah, that's right. Okay, but actually, the reason I asked about that is because I generally don't like using IDs for styling. So let's just rewrite this into a class right now. Then we'll show you what the difference will be. So here we just change the attribute from ID to class. And then if you go to the style sheet, anyone know what I need to change here?
The top
Here?
Yeah.
And then it's the same. So what I prefer to do is I still put IDs on some things. So I would maybe an ID for this one would be something like first important header or something like that. But I use those IDs to know, like, if I have some JavaScript that needs to get the very first important header, I use that for it. I try never to use styling on my IDs because you can run into some problems in terms of like when you want to override some styling, and that's something we will we'll see a lot of later on. I know a lot of people do styling on IDs,
Yeah,
and I
yeah.
completely understand that you do that, and I've seen it in so many tutorials all over the place. It's just like a thing that I have. I like to like underline that's better to do it on classes. And in any case, if I have an ID, I would actually prefer to just repeat that ID as a class here, rather than styling the ID as if I can get away with it. Of course, if I'm working on a project where everyone else is styling IDs, then I might follow the convention that they're using, just to not do work in a completely different way. So, yeah.
But this was just a way that you can target specific elements within your HTML code and apply styling to that. So remember that when you write it without anything, without like a class name or ID, it will target all of them. So that's something you need to have in mind when you write your CSS. There's actually a lot of different selectors you can use. So I think we'll just go into
Do Alt Command F and then you go full screen.
Then we can see like the most used are class and ID, but there's also different one where you can actually also, like this one for example, where you, for example, when you write div comma p, then it selects all the div elements and all p elements. You can target multiple selectors, multiple tags at the same time if there's like a situation where that is necessary.
Can we show some examples?
Yeah.
Of these? I think that would be really good.
So for example here, let's say we want to target, let's just say we want to target all, we don't have a div, but we can write p and then h2 for example. And then we could do
Maybe the font, something like that.
yeah, we can do like font weight, and then we could do both for example, so it makes all the and you can see they made all of them bold, so that's,
The headings were actually bold already, but
yeah, they were
but
already
now
bold.
we definitely made sure the headings are bold.
Yeah, but yeah, something like that, so you can target multiple like multiple elements at the same time.
So what's the difference between that one and the one without a comma?
So this one is like, it selects all p elements inside the div elements. So right now in our code we don't actually have a div, but we can just make one real quick.
Maybe try, what happens if you just remove the comma from what you just did?
Well, let's see what happens.
Okay, so
And then
the text is not bold anymore. Can anyone explain what happened?
Because we picked the.
We don't have H2
comma.
inside P.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
And it would be not very common to have H2 inside P. So
No.
if I see that in the code, I'd probably be like, is that a mistake? So let's try to use it for something more, actually useful.
More relevant.
Inside this section.
Yeah. Yeah, we could also, actually we can do it with, we could also do it with a div, but now we just wrote some sections, so we can do like this, inside this, so this will target all the p elements inside of the section. So if we go back here, then you can see that since all of these are inside the section, it will target all the p elements. But for example down here in the footer, this is not targeted because this is inside the footer element and not in the header. So there's a lot of different ways to do it. I don't think we'll go into most of these because they're more advanced. Or do you think there's anyone
Yeah, I
we
think
should cover?
maybe the descendant child, the next one is worth mentioning.
This one?
Yeah.
Yeah. So this one is like, remember we talked about like the tree structure before, like there's like a parent and a child to most elements. So this is a way that, for example, this one here, select all p elements where the parent is a div element. So we could do something similar here, right? Because when we go into the code, we can see that, okay, here's a section, and for example, this p tag, it has like a parent of a section in this case. So we could do something similar here, like we did before, where if we copy, and we go
4 fingers up.
Yeah. Then we write section here. So there will be some cases where, like,
Maybe make a case where we have a P that's nested deeper.
yeah. So we could do something.
Maybe put it inside the fig caption. I think that.
Oh yeah, we could do that actually. Where's it here? So we could do fig cap inside figure.
No, I was just thinking if you put that's inside the fig caption into a P tag. You usually wouldn't do that, but that.
Oh, you want
that
to?
doesn't matter. I just want to show a P that's
okay,
nested
okay.
deeper because if you see.
So you.
Yeah. So tell me this P that we're looking at here, is that inside a section? Yes, no?
No. No.
Hand up for yes and keep your hand down for no.
No.
Is the P tag inside a section? Hands up. Okay.
Inside.
So 4 of you think it's inside a section and the rest thinks it's not, or you don't know.
Yeah, it is.
It is inside a section, but it's also inside a fig caption. So it's not directly inside a section. Yeah, exactly. So if we see the styling now, you see that all the P tags that are directly inside a section. So under the first red headline, there is something there. That's bold, right? Under the next one, that's something that's bold. Then where do we have the fig caption? That's the fig one, truly something Italia. Is the first, second one, or was it both?
I think it was only the
It's
second
only
one.
of them. I think, yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the second one is a P inside a section, but it's not directly inside a section. There's something in between, so it's a section, figure, fig caption, P, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't say section P, okay?
So it won't apply, yeah?
Huh?
It won't apply on this.
Exactly, so it does not apply to that one. That's the difference between using the without the, so try removing the sentence child thing in your CSS. So just remove the smaller than. Yeah, so no, that doesn't, it should work now, right?
Yeah, it should.
Something you're about to save maybe? Or,
Oh yeah, I did. Oh, I forgot to save it in the HTML. No. Now I don't know what's going on.
okay, so what's going wrong here? We definitely have a P inside a section. Huh.
It's not inside section at all.
That's right.
Oh yeah, that's
oh
right.
yeah, that's
Yeah.
right. The section ends
Yeah,
there. There's
yeah,
not a
it
new
is.
one starting up.
I guess.
Yeah, that's right. So we would have to do a figure in this case because it's inside the figure, not a section. So like this, it would work for this one.
Yeah. Okay, and then try to do the sentence child thing.
Oh, with the
Just add the yeah. And see now it don't work. And why is that? Have a look at the markup. That's because between figure and the P we have fig caption, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So the reason that I'm showing this one is just that quite often you see a lot of styling where people just do like we have this div with this class, and then inside that we have a P tag. Style that. That's usually how people would style something like that. But I actually found that using those immediate child things quite often helps you in terms that it won't start trying to style those weird cases where you maybe have something that's deeper down that you suddenly start styling that you did not intend to style. And once you have like bigger websites or you have like multiple formats you're supporting and things like that. So that immediate child thing that can actually be really helpful in making sure that you only target as little as you need. Because with CSS it's very, very easy to do something that just like you think you're changing something here, but in reality you're also changing something there, and something here, and something there, and something there, and maybe you don't realize until you put the website out on the client starts looking at it and being like, hey, what the hell happened? It's very easy to run into problems with that with CSS. But-
What's the difference between element and element as a parent of like div p and div greater than sign p? Like, isn't it the child both ways? Like when a p is inside a div, so it's already.
So the difference is that when we use the, is it actually greater than or less than? It's greater than. So when you use the greater than, then the difference is that it would only apply the rule to elements that are directly inside. So if p, so the question you need to ask, if you have, let's get the code HTML on screen. So here we have the p, right?
Yeah.
Is the p a child of figure?
Yes.
No, but it's inside figure. It's actually the grandchild to figure, right? So that's the question you need to ask. Is figure the caption of this element? If that's more. Is figure the parent of this element? If that's true, then apply the rule. But if there's something in between, then it's not true.
Okay, so now the parent is figure caption in this case.
The parent is fig caption, yeah.
Yeah.
So if you wanted to style that p element right there, then you need to do fig caption greater than p.
Yeah. Okay. Okay.
So yeah, I don't know. Most of these are getting pretty complex, so I don't think we'll get too much into it.
I will just quickly just tell what's going on. So the plus means that if you have one element, then you can say any p elements that's lying next to a div element. So on the same level will be affected.
And then this one like selects every element that are preceded by a p element. So that means if it comes afterwards.
Yeah, and again, it's on the same level. It's not children nesting. It's on the same level. Those ones are not used very often. Then maybe the attribute selectors. I use those quite a lot. So that means that no, I think that's too much to dive into now.
Yeah.
But maybe
Before
before after is something that we use quite a lot. But I think we will dedicate a little bit of time to pseudo classes separately.
Yeah.
But it just means that you can style something that's no. Let's take that on another occasion.
Okay. So yeah, basically this is usually what we do for like best practices to place all your CSS in a separate file, because it's just easier. It makes it much more convenient to write code. But I'm gonna show the last way of writing code, which is not when you write it inline, but you are still gonna write it in the file. So you can actually inside HTML you can do a style tag like this, and basically like anything in between here is like valid CSS. So basically we could just copy all of this like so and put it in here. So you see it also like the way that it's displayed is like it's exactly the same way like before. So you know that it's valid CSS, and you can also see like the editor here is helping us like showing the what color we are using here. So actually if we were to delete this and save it like such, go in here, then it would still be it would still apply. But usually this is not used very often. Usually we just want to do it in a separate file. So yeah, I don't really know if there's more to cover about CSS selectors. And
This is something you might see if you're doing styling for emails, for instance.
yeah,
Because in emails you cannot do an external style sheet, or at least you cannot depend on it working across all email clients.
In that case, we don't need this link.
Exactly. Yeah. Right now we are loading the same styles twice, so technically you should be removing the stuff on line 8. Oh, you emptied the file.
Yeah, I
okay,
emptied it,
okay, so
yeah.
so we're putting the styles there and then we're loading an empty file.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, but you could delete this and it would work the same way. So yeah, I don't really know if there's more to cover.
no, but generally the takeaway here is that the good practice when you're doing like traditional HTML and CSS is that you put the CSS in a separate file
Called in style, or it's.
It definitely it should be called .css, but it could be called whatever you choose to call it.
And this
Um,
HTML file we should call index.
So if you call it,
General
maybe just show the difference between calling it index and something arbitrary.
Yeah. So
Yeah, we don't have a web server running.
no, that's the problem. I think index is.
General practice.
Yeah, I think best practice to use is like the main page that people land on when they go to a site should often be named index HTML.
Landing pages normally.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
if we go to any page here, you can see this one is code.visualstudio.com/download. So if you try to imagine how their folder structure when they built this website looks like, then in reality they probably have a folder called download, but inside that folder they probably have a file called index.html. Because the thing is, browsers are made in a way that they always look for index.html as the first file when they go in a folder. Index.html or index.php, or think you can do it with SP as well, right? Or
It's typically the web server that decides.
Yeah, the web-
default, and then
exactly, yeah,
so
yeah.
The Microsoft one, it's default.html. It used to be, but now it's also index.
so, but the point is just if you call it index.html, then if you put it on a web server, the user does not have to type index.html to get to the first page. He just can do like this, right? And then when you do the next page, then it's maybe called page 1. Then you do like this. So all the other pages obviously needs to be called something else than index.html. So index.html, that just indicates the page that you start on. Yeah.
Yeah.
If you go to a folder, find this file.
And then I think style.css is just a very generic name. Usually, typically speaking, it's easier to call the CSS file the same as your HTML file if you only have one. So in this case,
Maybe let's just continue with showing how to import files.
yeah. Oh,
I think the time is alright for that.
so import a second CSS file.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So for example, if we copy this like such, and then for example, if you want to make a new CSS file, so we want to add it inside of here, then we can. It's a bit of a bad name convention, but
maybe call it page.css or something.
yeah.
Like that.
And then we're still in the styles folder, but now the separate file is page.css. So the thing in front here, where we link to the folder, is the same way, but now it's a separate file.
So probably so what we're moving into now is how to think about structuring your CSS, because once you start working with really big websites, CSS turns to be a mess really quickly. So what you could imagine is maybe in the style.css, that's where you put stuff that's really global. So that's something like, what font are we using on this website? It might be something like if you have like a generic margin for every element, so there's the same space around all the elements. Let's put that there. But then we have the page thing, so that might be like, so how are we displaying pages? Maybe that's something about when we are on an article page. Then maybe we have headings that have a specific size or something like that. This only applies to article pages. Maybe other pages have something else or something like that. But you start thinking about, okay, so we have some certain types of pages or content. Maybe we should try to build a structure in our CSS that kind of like reflects that in one way or another. So maybe it's an idea to maybe in the CSS. No, I know what we do. Okay, so in the page.css,
Yeah.
I think we put everything that's inside the main. No, not like that. I think you can keep what you had in the style CSS. Maybe I should. I have something in
go
my head.
ahead.
So let me type.
No worries.
So my idea here is that we have this. Where did we put our page? This one, right? And we haven't really introduced you to the developer tools, but it's just like you can get this debugging tool so you can see what's going on the page. And you can see all this stuff that's highlighted now is inside the main element. And that's the kind of stuff that I want to be styling in that file called page. So maybe we'll say main, and then we do like all the h2 elements inside main. And then I want to do like font size 34 pixels, something like that. And it didn't work. So didn't load it probably, or did we break something?
Maybe you can save it.
That was not saved. Yeah. That's interesting. So this one was H2. Oh, this is probably because we did like set some styling already on the font size. Yeah, we did. So now we're already coming into like how styles can like conflict with each other, how styles can override each other. So here we were telling that if you have an H2 and okay, so the formatting here is a little bit messed up. No, it's not an H2. If we have something with the class important header, then it should have font size 25. And here in this one, we're just saying, so if you have an H2 that inside main, then it should be font size 34. So who wins?
The last
The last one, this one?
The last one, comment will be considered. If you have two comments complete together, the last one will be.
Oh yeah, so the last, okay, so if you have like, if I do like this,
I think the second one.
so you're saying that the one on line 6 will win.
I think the second one will be considered.
Yep.
That's
It will override it.
But because that's correct. If you have everything in one file,
Yeah.
it's always the last statement
But if it is
that, or if it's based on, because there's a little more to it. So let me move this one here, and maybe I'll put it here. Which one wins? The second one? Anyone who disagree?
no, I think the ID will win because that's targeted.
There's no ID involved here. This is a class.
Class more specific.
Exactly.
Class more specific.
Yeah. Class will win because classes are more specific. Here what we do is this is an element and this is an element. So we're selecting an element inside an element. But classes are more specific than elements. So this one will win. And I deliberately put this one on top of the other one so it should look like the other one wins. But the point is this one has a class. So what I could do if I want to make sure that important header are included as well. Does anyone have an idea?
With this one, then
Yeah.
you use a comma,
Yeah?
and then what was that? I can't remember.
Important header.
Does it have an ID?
So
Is that
it was a class, important header.
so there will be a dot?
Yeah, I already did it.
Because I cannot see from that far, so
Okay, let me zoom it up a bit.
thank you.
So now they're both the same size. But I think for right now, the stuff that we're doing right now is a little bit confusing. I think we'd rather just remove that. It's a little bit against what I was planning. I think, so if I want to show you like on a more generic level, so let's say here on, so this, now we're working with the global style sheet. So what I would do is something like H2 and H3 and H4 should have a font family, and let's do this one for example, and a font size of maybe 40 pixels even, make them bigger and bigger. And I save that, and right for now I'm just going to comment this out, so this one is not affecting anything. So now I set like the, globally I set the font family, so which font we're using and the size. But now I want to make sure that if I'm on inside our main tag, I want to make a different rule, and that rule is specifically for H2 tags. Actually did something. weird because I set H1, H2, and H3 to be the same size. But I mean, you can do that if you want. So now I'm telling that if it's an H2 inside main, then it should change. And that means that this one changed. And the reason that this one wins now is that this is just element selectors. There's no classes involved, right?
Yeah.
But this is also element selectors, right?
But it is inside
It's
the main,
inside,
so
right.
we are specifying.
So there are two element selectors. So the number of selectors have importance, and whether it's elements or whether it's classes have importance. Huh?
No, element after class. Class is more specific.
Exactly, yeah. So how about IDs?
IDs
They're
first.
more specific.
They're even more specific.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So
So it doesn't matter in one or two files this command is, yes. It's
Mhm.
prioritizing only because of elements or
it's
how-
also looking at the order of things.
yeah, but it
So
doesn't
if-
matter in how many files you have. In the
No,
number.
no, not how many files I split it out into, because what you need to think about is that I imported style.css first, and then I imported page.css, and that means that's effectively the same as taking all the stuff I have here and putting it in the bottom of page.css. But that means that actually page.css is more important than style.css. It has higher, it wins. So if you put one rule in one and the same rule in the other, then the one in page.css would win. And then let's just try doing the ID, and that was what I told you before. I don't like ID styling, and that's for this particular reason. So we have this one. So now I'm styling an ID, and ideal font size is 100 pixels, so it's massive. So this one is massive now. Okay, but later on I figure out that if this ID is inside, that's a bad example. Yeah, so we have main, and then I also had a class in that one. That was important header. So if I tell it that important header, now I want that one to be smaller. But that doesn't work, and that's because IDs have higher precedence than classes have, and it doesn't matter how many things I put in front of this one. I could do like body, and I could do like HTML to make it even more specific. It wouldn't change the thing. It's still the same. And that's like the main reason why I would try to avoid using IDs for styling, because it can be very difficult to cancel your changes later on when you figure out your system has like some cases where you need to make an exception. Yeah. So anyhow, so the point was to show you that you can make a file here where maybe we have one rule here for the H2, then we have main. What else do we have inside main? We have H1, of course. Maybe we want to do all the paragraphs. Font style maybe, and then make them italic. So now all the paragraphs inside main is italic. But down here, you remember we had like a paragraph tag? No, actually, that's also inside main. Is there a paragraph tag in that stuff down there?
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
from the thing caption.
Yeah, but that's still inside main. You need to look. Yeah, okay, so we have paragraph tags down there, right? And those are not affected. So that's correct. Cool. Yeah, so the last thing I just want to show you is, so now we imported several files up here. But you can actually do something else. So you can do something CSS import. So you can see what we're doing here. You can actually say import within. Notice that we're inside a CSS file. So here you're importing navigation.css. And you can also do that as a URL, is it maybe on a different server or something like that. But let's take this syntax here. So we can do like import navigation, that's not navigation, that's page.css. And then we can delete this line. And where is our... so it lost the italic. I think I know why that happened. Let's figure out. So the italic is here on a page.css, and we're importing that inside style. But we're importing that before the other stuff. No, but we're not overriding italic, so it's not because it's getting overridden. So I'm actually a little worried that the import did not work. Let's do something really radical. Something like this. That should make the entire page red, so it's not working. We're still importing style.css. Oh, I didn't save it. Classic. Okay, so now page CSS is working. And we have italic as well, yeah. So what I wanted to point your attention to was that here I'm actually importing page CSS before all this stuff here. So what I do is I do something like this, and then I maybe do like global.css, because that was the point that all the stuff that we're putting here was supposed to be global. So if I put this here, and then I can go back here and I can do the same with that one. So I want to import global first, because that's the least important. So if I want to make some changes afterwards, I can do that. Here we could do something really crazy radical. We could say something like, if we do a star, that means every single element. So h1, p tags, everything really. Then we could do like background color, and then we could do red. So everything has red background now, right? Then we can go in page CSS, and then we can say that, yeah, let's do the main P, and then do background color, and I think you can do none, or is that for background? I think that's for background. Yes. Yeah. So now all the P tags that are inside main gets a white background instead. And the reason for that is that global comes first, and then page.css comes and overrides that rule and tells, hey, I'm more important. Well, actually, it would still be more important because we have like two selectors here, so we could also do like that, and it should still work. And it still works. So something changed down here, so I think we affected a little more before. I'm not sure why. All right. So I think that's enough on CSS. Any questions about that so far? Okay, so a really nice page I want to have you all go and bookmark is this one, the 30 CSS selectors you should memorize. It has very nice descriptions of all the selectors in there. So you can see there's like the star selector, there's the ID selector, there's the class selector, there's if you have multiple elements inside each other, pseudo selectors, the plus thing, this one, the descendant child that we looked at, all kind of things, and they're explained really well, and I'm going to post a link to it on Slack. So,
You good point. This URL is
huh?
You paste all this stuff in this side.
Yes, it's on Slack now. All right. So just a really quick note on ARIA. So ARIA is used for, you can see here, it's the Accessible Rich Internet Application Specification. So what does that mean? Accessible, do you know what that means?
I think that can be accessible.
Usability?
No, I think
Like
that can be
everyone's
accessible.
next.
Yeah, so accessibility is typically if you like see some place where there's stairs and then there's a ramp for someone who's in a wheelchair or something like that. So accessibility is usually something about like making sure that everyone can access your services, even if they have like a physical handicap or something else. And accessibilities that we think about on the web include like it could be blind people, but it could also just be people who are dyslexic who are really struggle to read, for instance. I work at DR, and we actually have like a website dedicated to people with special needs, and that actually also includes people like some of you who are probably learning Danish at the moment. So this is a site with news that are rewritten in a more accessible Danish. So they just make the language less complicated, and then they release the same news that you would see on the regular news page sections. And there's also like a function that it can read up the articles and stuff like that. All these things are done in order to improve accessibility. So improve how many people can we reach, and can we reach people with some special needs. This kind of work is a little more drastic than what most companies do. But the first thing you need to make sure if you want to make your websites more accessible is you need to make sure that that it works well with a screen reader. And we already discussed that a little bit earlier, that if you have someone who is visually impaired or maybe completely blind or something like that, they might use a screen reader. And actually also some dyslexic people who struggle to read, they also might use screen readers. And the general rule in terms of screen readers is that if you make your HTML good and semantic, that's the stuff that we've been already spending a lot of time talking about. If you make it really good semantics, then the screen reader will do pretty well. But you cannot always trust it to be like that. So there are some cases where you need to make some, yeah?
Can you explain what semantics
are? Yeah, maybe I'm just assuming that so usually I would contrast it with syntax. So syntax is like when you're writing code, you have a special syntax. You have to put the letters in a certain order, right? Whereas semantics is about the contents. But I'm not sure it's a great explanation. Let's find a definition. The branch of linguistics and logic concerned with meaning. Yeah, that's pretty accurate. So when we're talking about semantics in HTML, it's the meaning of all the stuff that we're doing. So when we have something that gives us some links so we can go to a different page, what was the meaning of this? The meaning was to build a navigation so you can navigate around the web page, right? Yeah. But in terms of HTML, as we discussed before, semantics is mainly about organizing your things well, and it's about using the right tags. So if there is a tag in the HTML specification that is designed for the stuff that you're doing, use that one rather than just using a completely plain div tag. Yeah. So here is an example of some ARIA. So the point is that the browser vendors, the people who build browsers, they have like agreed on some special attributes that you can use in order to make your websites more accessible. And in this case, we have something, this one has a role, and that's used by the screen reader to figure out that you have a progress bar. So I think the screen reader will read out that now it's come across a progress bar, and then it will read out your ARIA values, because right now the value is 75, but if you are a person with normal vision, you can just like see on the progress bar how far it is, right? But you need to have the screen reader read that for your users if they're blind. So that's why we need to add more attributes. So they added this attribute called ARIA value now, and they also have one that's called ARIA value min. So it's telling like how far can it go down and how high can it go with the ARIA value max. So this is about adding extra meaning to your HTML, and that meaning can be interpreted by a screen reader that can read it aloud. Let's see if we have something interesting here.
Do you use these ARIA attributes in your work?
Yes, it's not super common. Actually, what we work more with is the tab order. So when you're tapping through a website, you know, if you so you can see if I press tab, you can see now it's selected languages. I can tap through the website, but sometimes if you build a website, you end up building something where it taps from there and then it goes to the bottom of the page and then it goes back and stuff like that, and that can be super confusing. Obviously, the Mozilla page about ARIA has a pretty decent tab order, but
If I can comment on this?
or
I'd
tapping.
say that, I think it's pretty common that companies, the ones who have websites built, they put in the requirements that it should be accessible. For government institutions, when they want their websites built or designed, it's an absolute must.
Yeah.
To have that.
But it's new thing, yeah? So it's
Yeah, but not often you get like you have a tool when you make the website that will check it through and let you know, oh, this is good or this is not good.
Yeah. So the way you can affect the tab order, generally the tab order is based on where are the elements located in the page, right? But sometimes you use some styling that means that an element that is visually placed somewhere on the page is not placed the same place in code. And that's one of those cases where you need to have a look into the tab order. So you use this attribute called tab index. In this case, you have one that's set to 0. But you can also set it, if you set it to -1, that means you cannot tap to it anymore. So if you have something that you know, this is just like noise, it will not be interesting for the screen reader to ever see this element, then you can set tab index -1. And here you can see like tab index 5. So obviously if it has like tab index 1, then it will look for the next tab index. And if that's 5, it will jump to 5. If it's 2, it will go to 2 first. Is this? No, I was just thinking because yeah. So see this example here. Whoa, where do we go? Yeah. Okay. So right now we are standing on this example up here, and we want to go down to this guy here. Whoa, but we jumped straight to this guy there. And that's because the tab index was manipulated here. Another thing is you can also You can use ARIA hidden. Yeah, I was hoping for an example, but ARIA hidden will just hide something from a screen reader. Again, if you have something that only makes sense to people with normal vision, then it might be a good idea simply to skip it for the screen reader to make less noise. On the other hand, in some cases, if people are like visually impaired, they might see some things, but they don't have good vision. Then they might be frustrated if you hide too much for the screen reader because they know there's more, but they have no idea how to be told exactly what is going on because you chose to exclude it from the screen reader. So that's also something to think about. But generally, if you use those semantic elements such as nav and aside and main and so on, then generally the screen reader will have ways to tell the user where they are on the page. And then you should be using the area labels for stuff that is not included if you don't have a semantic element for it. But I think we are about to run out of time, and I want to just explain to you how you can get your homework handed in. And Benjamin actually has been doing a little guide for GitHub. See if I can find out where it was. Was it here? Hand in homework. Yeah. So check this. You need to hand in your homework on GitHub. You don't need to do a lot of like commands in the terminal, as we will learn later on to use GitHub. You can actually just use the web interface on GitHub to hand in your homework. And Benjamin has actually created a video. Whoa. Showing exactly how you can. It's strange that it's rendered like that. I don't know why. Showing how you can hand in your homework. Yeah.
Say a really quick thing.
Yeah.
It would be really good if everyone could post their GitHub profile into the Slack channel now, so that we can all put you into our Slack organization on GitHub.
And I'm pretty sure that is also mentioned in the guide here. Yeah. My browser is it thinks it's like in mobile or something like that. Yeah, back again. I think the last step was to post it on Slack. Yes, post your index.html file on this Slack channel in this format. So it's not the GitHub account, but we can see your account out of this URL. So I think that should be fine enough. Yeah. Great. Questions? All right. Thank you for today. Looking forward to seeing you next time. Question?
I have a question. I need to put the breakpoints in the part of JavaScript inside of HTML.
Yeah, okay, that's right. So this is a little more advanced topic, but let's just have a look at it anyway. So the question is,
JavaScript independent, I don't have any problem.
yeah. So if you feel like this is weird and strange, and then you can just close your ears. If you're curious, you're welcome to follow along. So I just go, this is like Muesli, that's like a little application that shows like some nice web design examples. I use that as my start page. So I just want to show how you can set a breakpoint in JavaScript first, and you're telling me that that works for you. I have no idea if this JavaScript code will actually be executed. It did. Okay. So if we set a breakpoint, we can pause the execution of code somewhere, and then we can go like step by step through the code. And that's great for JavaScript. Now you're asking, how can you do the same for HTML? Yes. So HTML is not like, I guess it is written line by line, but it's not in the same way executed like JavaScript. It's like a document that's just pushed out to the browser, right? But what you can do is in Chrome, you have some tools to do something along the lines of what you're asking. So if we select maybe this guy here, since there's actually nothing else to select, yeah, tile. So I think that would be all of it. I can right click here, and then I can say break on, and then I can say either attribute modification, node removal, or subtree modifications. So node removal is that my browser will pause when this thing is removed from the view. Attribute modification, maybe they change the width or height or something like that, then the browser will pause. Subtree modification, maybe there's some of the divs underneath this one that will be affected, and then it can pause as well. Let's try subtree modifications and then see if we can provoke it to change something. I just don't know how, because this is not my application. I didn't really have a sample application for that sort of purpose. Now it's gone. Maybe I should have said node removal. Let's try doing that with another one. I have no idea what to do in order to get that to to disappear. Maybe search for something else. Tiger. Come on. So that was just Google search. Okay. So you need to have an application where you kind of have like a test case where you know if you have like a remove button on something, and then you do the subtree modification or like the remove from the DOM, then it would pause the browser. Then what happens is that it would actually it will show you the JavaScript that just removed that HTML from the DOM, because I don't really see why you would place breakpoints in HTML. What you want to know is you want to figure out what JavaScript is manipulating the DOM, that something is changing there.
HTML, it's not needed with breakpoint, but in the part of the code inside of the Java, inside of the HTML,
yeah.
It start from the script.
Oh, so you're talking about if you have HTML and then you have a script tag inside HTML. Okay. Yeah, okay, cool. I'm pretty sure you can do that. So that's like, let's see if they have something like that here. So they have a lot of libraries there. They actually have, no. Okay, let's make a quick example. We're skipping quite far ahead in terms of what we're supposed to do in this class, but so let's say I have some JavaScript code here, and I want to break when that happens. So first of all, let's see that there is something that it's working. So you can see that my JavaScript says hello. Cool. So the way that I would set a breakpoint for this one would probably be to go to, I think I need to go to sources. Yeah, let me try. So if I go to sources, then typically you'll find like the directories out here with all the different JavaScript files, right? But you also have the index file. And if I recall correctly, you can just go down here and set a breakpoint. Yeah. So now it paused on that one. So you can see it did not say hello yet. But if I resume, it said hello.
Inside the Visual Studio, I found some technical breakpoint because of the browser. But
yeah. I haven't really tried that. I don't know how it works.
Yeah, I do some extension. You can report inside.
Yeah,
inside of
yeah.
the
I know I've used it a little bit for debugging in Node.js, but not stuff that comes out in the client. But I mean, I think it's more important to be confident with debugging in Chrome than in Visual Studio when you're working with JavaScript, because most of the stuff you're going to be doing is out on the client, so that means that stuff in the browser. So start with that. I mean, for server-side debugging in Node.js, it's interesting to look into what you can do in Visual Studio, but that's something that we're going to be looking at 5-6 months from now. So, yeah. All right.
Good answer.
Cool. Yeah. So thanks for today. And don't forget to ask on Slack if you have questions or comments or anything like that. So.